Aloha, namaskar, and hello. This is Hawaii State of Clean Energy with Jay Fidel, except of course I'm not Jay Fidel. So I'm here at ThinkTech Studios. I'm Anu Hitchell, broadcasting live from downtown Honolulu. And in the studio with me today, I have Lori McCarney, who is a very accomplished management professional and especially strong in business strategy development. She is also an avid cyclist and an Ironman triathlete. So welcome to the studios.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
It's a pleasure to have you. So how was it to be in the Ironman?
Oh, the Ironman's a fantastic experience. I think that it's one of those things when you set out to say, I'm going to do something, I'm going to try something that maybe seems impossible to me.
Right.
And so you work really hard at it, and then you go and compete, and you're competing with some really great athletes, and then you finish it, and you just feel so good.
Yeah, that was one of my dreams, but I think I've moved on to other dreams at this point. So we'll just talk about the other dream, which is really about Bikeshare and Bikeshare Honolulu, Hawaii specifically.
Mm-hmm.
So yes, and that's an interesting distinction because most of these cities are Bikeshare X name of city, right? So it's Bikeshare Minneapolis
Yes.
or Bikeshare Chicago or so on, but it's really, you're not just going to be doing Bikeshare Honolulu, but you're planning to expand to the whole state?
Well, you know, what we look at is for Hawaii, there are some communities where bike sharing can really make a difference and give people an option, another way to get around it, where they don't have to use their car. Honolulu is probably the best example of a dense urban environment that can benefit from bike share, but there's other communities in Hawaii too. But what we want to do first is say, in the area that has the biggest need at the time, and it has, you know, a big population and a lot of density and a lot of the conditions that are good for bike share that will help make bike share work and work for people. Honolulu and the urban Honolulu has a lot of those features.
That's
so we
right.
wanted to start there and then work out everything, get everything all set up, and then we can make ourselves available and leverage it into other communities around the state.
And then the world.
You know, it is in the world. It's like everywhere.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah.
And as I was doing a little research on this, because I host another show here at ThinkTech Hawaii, but I was doing some research on this, and it looked like there are about 1,000 systems out there.
That sounds right. You know, it's amazing. Several years, it's a brand new industry too. Maybe 5 to 10 years old. It's not, you know, it's not established like a lot of industries, but the most recent kind of system, what they're calling it the third phase of bike share, was maybe started in Paris. If anybody's been to Paris, they've seen Vélib.
Yes.
And the idea of that bike share system, which is now over 20,000 bikes and 1,500 stations in that city, was to try to help deal with issues that cities have around traffic and congestion and bringing people more back to the streets and trying to help provide a solution. I think that a lot of different cities then went there and saw what was happening and how that could change cities, and it just sort of spurred all of these different growth. So now we have in the United States, we have a huge system in New York called City Bike. Some people might be familiar with that.
I wonder who funded that
I
one.
wonder.
It's CITI, correct?
Yes, CITI Bike. And then Divvy in Chicago, Capital Bike Share in Washington, D.C., Nice Ride in Minneapolis, Pronto in Seattle. You know, it goes on and on and on.
Yeah. And so before we get into the program and so on, I wanted to just take a step back and talk about the bigger issues. I am, of course, interested in climate change issues, so I'm just going to put in a little plug into that, which is that we've all heard about the Paris Agreement, and well, maybe we all haven't, but it is something we should know about. It's the agreement where 196 nations came together to agree on a collective goal of under 2-degree warming for the world. And as part of that, it's to try and reduce emissions. So, and Hawaii, of course, has its own very aggressive clean energy goals with the Hawaii Clean Energy Initiative to be 100% clean energy by 2045.
Fantastic.
So this is, of course, all part of that reduction in emissions, starting from the global goal to nations and how they implement that goal, and then going down to the subnational, the national and subnational levels, and then right down to the city and state. Well,
there you go.
For you guys, state level, but really going from the city. And transportation is a huge contributes really to a lot of emissions. So it's about worldwide transportation is about a quarter of the total carbon dioxide pie. So that's quite a lot. And in Hawaii, it's about that much, and in the rest of the United States, it's about a third. So you know, depending on who is giving you those numbers and so on. So obviously bike share is, and well, just commuting by bike is a
or
great.
Even the trips. You know, I think a lot of people talk about how can we reduce emissions out of a carbon producing, out of an engine, right? We're really about mode shift. You know, if so many trips are under a mile or under 3 miles, you know, I've seen statistics that, you know, it's like 60% of trips are under 3 miles. But then people use cars for those trips. So for every mile that's taken, let's see, for every mile that a car drives, they're putting 1 pound of CO2 into the environment. And so if we can replace 1 mile of car trip with bike, then we're automatically taking that out. So we're projected to do somewhere between 1.5 million and 2 million trips a year. And if you plan that to be about 2 miles per trip, then we're talking about 4 million pounds of carbon CO2 removed, not put into the atmosphere.
That's right.
So that's where we can play a role on that side of how we help to provide an option for people. Providing people, when you think about it here, there's not a lot of good options. If you want to take a short trip, the easiest thing is to take your car.
That's right. But then you have the parking issue.
Then you have parking and you have traffic. But, you know, a lot of people would use mass transit, but, you know, everybody's in such a hurry. You know, and so I've got to figure out the bus and wait for the bus and then get on the bus and, you know, is it going to go? And that's a lot of people don't want to be that patient. And that's where bike share is beautiful, because bike share is on demand, it's on your schedule. You know, we're planning it to be super convenient, and it should be faster than taking a car in most situations. And
so really, this is an interesting concept because it's not about commuting on your bike. It's not about recreational biking. It's really about those short trips. And I was interested, it really sort of hit home when I looked at your website, and it said, bike sharing is a transit system that enables its customers to make short trips using a network of publicly accessible bikes. So you're not really talking about commuting every day on your bike, you know, and you're really just talking about those short trips that you've just described.
Take me as an example. I drive a car. And so I drive from somewhere out, probably 7 or 8 miles away. I actually don't see myself commuting by bike. I live up on a hill, it would be a hassle, it would take me forever. But when I get downtown, then I go, if I have to go somewhere, I probably get my car out of parking and drive. Now, if I could just go downstairs from my building and get on a bike and go for 10 minutes and get where I was going to go, I'd get there faster and I wouldn't have to use my car. And so I'd be doing good things for my health, I'd be doing good things for the environment at the same time, and I'd be doing it faster. Right now, I don't have that option.
And so let's talk a little bit about that issue of how some of these what some of the benefits of bike sharing, and specifically, where do you see most of those benefits accruing? Would it be in a place like the downtown area, or just specific to Honolulu at this point?
Sure. Specific to Honolulu, we're starting our initial phase in the area where we think it will be most successful, and that means where it will get the most use. So that's between Chinatown and Diamond Head, Makai of H1, but we're also including stations in Makiki and at UH Manoa. So there, when you think about it, that whole distance is about 5.5 miles. So if you were to ride a bike all the way from Chinatown all the way to Diamond Head, it would be 5 miles maybe. But most people wouldn't ride that far. So they'd have something going on in between. So what we do is then we're putting stations every 2 to 3 blocks in that area. The idea being that we have to make it we have to make it easier and faster for people to use a bike than something else to get them to do it.
Right.
Because we're not competing with anybody except what they're already doing. I'm already taking the car, I'm already deciding not to go, or I'm taking, some other form of transportation. So for us, we have to be convenient, we have to be affordable, we have to be easy to use, and we just have to be omnipresent.
So I understand about the omnipresent, which is you've got the bikes at these every 2-3 blocks.
Right.
Now about the rest of it.
Yes.
So easy to use.
Yes.
Which means that there will be bikes there when you want them. It's
Yes.
almost like you've got a horse all saddled, ready to go.
Exactly.
And these stations will have, so behind us we see on the screen as well some stations, and so we'll have these stations which presumably they'll have bikes there all the time.
Yes. So that's where bike share gets, so people have said to me, why is this such a big deal? Just give everybody a bike. But one of the reasons that you don't ride a bike is how much of a hassle it is. And the hassle is I have to lock it up so it doesn't get vandalized and all of that. And then, so then if you're going to have something that's going to replace that convenience of your own personal bike or that ability to use it, then you have to be able to provide a bike where people want it and have a place to put it where people want to leave it. So there's a lot of technology actually involved in bike share. So what we know is what's going on with each of the stations. So we know that in our headquarters, which will be some warehousey type place, but in there we'll know what's going on at all of our stations. This one's starting to get full. We better get somebody out there to pull some bikes out so that people will be able to dock it. This one's getting empty. We have to get bikes there. So when we first come out, we're using all of the traffic statistics and all of that to determine, okay, how do we start? What's our best guess now?
It's almost like an inventory of goods, and you're looking
real
at
time.
Yeah.
And then as we see what the patterns look like, then we'll do some adjustments to placement and how many docks we have and how many bikes. But we will have a pretty large street team. It's a very people business too. So we'll have a lot of people out on the street helping people get accustomed to using checking out the bikes, and then also making sure that the docks are full of bikes and that there's a place for you to put a bike where you're going.
And so another advantage, of course, of this would be that you don't have to maintain that bike. You personally would not have to maintain those, so that would be taken care of. It's almost like well, at this point, I'm sort of also familiar with the car share program that Enterprise Rent-A-Car had put out, and that's on university campuses and so on. And I know there are certain programs like that in London and some of the big cities where you just sort of sign up, and is that sort of the mirror image?
It's sort of like that, because the idea is I don't have to maintain the bike, I don't have to store the bike, I don't have to lock the bike. It's, the bikes lock into the stations.
Right, and if it gets stolen, it's someone else's problem.
It's my problem then. But, I think that the whole bike sharing thing has been built to say it has to be on demand, and it has to be that you don't worry about it. So, and you don't have to take the bike back where you got it. You just take it where you're going and you leave it. And then at that point you might say, you know what, now I'm going to go with some friends and go somewhere else. I'm not thinking about the bike. I almost think of it sort of like a pedal yourself taxi. I don't think about taxi until I need one and I want to get one. Then I take it. When I leave it, I don't even think about it again. And that's the kind of thing with bike share, is that you don't, when you're at the restaurant or you're somewhere, you don't even think about, I wonder if my bike's okay. I wonder if, I wonder if somebody's going to steal it. I wonder where I'm going to park it when I get there. This is like, no, you just don't even think about any of those things.
Does it have a sort of AAA-like system where if you got a flat tire or something, that someone would come out and help you?
Yeah, so one of the other reasons to have the stations so close, so you say, well, first of all, we'll be maintaining the bikes, and they will be checked all the time. We want to make sure that they're in great working order. But say you happen to get a flat tire, and they're big old chunky tires.
Yes.
So you happen to get a flat tire. So you shouldn't have more than 1 or 2 blocks to walk the bike, dock it at the station, push a button to say this bike's broken, which signals us that there's a broken bike. Get another bike and be on your way.
Okay. Well, so when we come back, we'll have to take a break right now, but when we come back, let's talk more about the infrastructure that needs to go with all of this wonderful dream and wonderful idea, and hopefully becoming a reality. So when we come back from the break, we'll talk more about bike shares and bike sharing, rather. Bike shares sounds like it's something from Wall Street, but which is not at all what it is. So and we'll come back and we'll talk with Lori more about all of this. So don't go away, we'll be back.
Okay, I'm Jay Fidel, that's Ray Starling. We co-host a show called Hawaii, the State of Clean Energy, every Wednesday, 4 to 5 p.m. It's really interesting. You know, Ray has a way of unzipping these guys. He asks them these questions and all this stuff tumbles out, and we find out stuff we would never know about without Ray's questions. Thank you, Ray.
You're welcome, Jay. I'm very pleased to be your Ed McMahon every Wednesday at 4 o'clock here on the internet. So you can join us and see what's happening in the energy world, and there is a lot going on. So join us every Wednesday at 4 o'clock.
Yeah, come around, be energized, right here on Think Tech. Aloha.
Aloha! How you doing? It's me, Angus McTech, wishing you to welcome and join us to see us on Hibachi Talk on Think Tech Hawaii. Join my co-hosts, Gordo the Tech Czar and Andrew the Security Guy, every Friday from 1300 to 1345. We look forward to seeing you. We'll talk tech and we'll have some wee bit of fun. And remember, let your wing gang free wherever you be. Aloha!
Welcome back to Hawaii's State of Clean Energy, and I'm in the studio here with Lori McCarney, who is CEO of Bikeshare Hawaii, and we're talking about a really unique, well, it's actually not becoming that unique, which is wonderful. So it's actually a new program, unique in Hawaii, but it's a new program, and we're talking about how you can use bicycles for short commuting, for short trips, not for commuting to work, but just short trips where you're just running out to buy some milk from the 7-Eleven or going down to Costco to get a pizza, although I find that my trips to Costco are never short and actually quite...
And they sort of get big stuff.
Yeah,
which is where Bikeshare can work, you know? It's
Right.
like you might take Bikeshare one way, and then you might catch a ride or take Uber or take, you know, some other way back.
True.
You don't end up with too much.
Well, it also helps you to not buy too much, which is good, because you really can't fit all that much into your fridge.
You know what happens? Yeah, it's true. And you know, one of the cool things about Bikeshare that you start to see in other communities, it really supports small businesses. Because what happens is when you're in a car, you have these big destinations of big shopping malls and all the small stores that you used to walk by in the old days, you just drive by them, you don't even see them anymore. Sometimes I notice stores when I'm stuck in traffic because I happen to look over and it's like, I didn't know that was there. And so what happens with Bikeshare is it gets people back on the street, and then it increases their range a little bit, and then they can go to the baker, they can go to the small stores, they can go to some of these things and get back to sometimes a really nice urban existence if I do my shopping every day instead of once every 2 weeks at Costco, you know, or whatever. And so it really, one of the benefits that's just not that obvious is this benefit to business, which is really nice.
That's right, and so generating more jobs and so on. And just a more diverse and more community-like feel rather than this impersonal shopping mall, which... And of course, I mean, I see why people would want to go to a big shopping mall because, especially in a place like Missouri or Minneapolis, Minnesota, you know, where you're looking at people who are, well, it's cold most of the year and it's doing something nasty is coming down from the sky at some point every day, you know. So, but here in Hawaii, you've got such a beautiful climate, and you know, you would think that it would be a pleasure to walk down the street.
It's sort of nice to get outside, but it's sort of hot sometimes too, you know, it's like nobody wants to sweat either. And so that's the cool thing about bikes is that, and I get into, so why would you ride a bike if you could take a car or if you could walk? So it's cooler to ride a bike at a nice, comfortable pace than it is to walk, because you have a little bit of breeze that happens. But you know, when you talk about the small businesses and people back on the streets and stuff, it's also a societal benefit. We're becoming more detached from people as we're online and we're at these big malls, and it's not personal. And Hawaii is a very person-to-person type of place. And that ability to really get to your community and know your neighbor a little bit more at that street level is something I think that we would all enjoy. I mean, people here enjoy being around people. And they enjoy being outside, and so this helps make that happen.
And this is a perfect place for something, like that. It's almost like it was made for Hawaii. And of course, there are wonderful health benefits of riding your bike. You know, if you can stay away from the cars.
Well, you know what's, so the cars, there's a big perception, and I know it's scary for people. In fact, one of the main probably the biggest reason why people won't ride a bike is that they're afraid. You know, they're afraid that they'll get hit by a car. We have busy streets. The streets have been taken over by cars, you know. I remember my mom talking, she grew up in San Diego, and she grew up in San Diego, and she said there weren't cars then. I mean, there were. Oh, she's not that old. Oh, she's watching. There were cars, but they hadn't overtaken everything. And so she could go and walk and take the bus and ride her bike. And I think some of us remember that in our childhood, a little bit of being able to do that. And then the cars actually fueled all this move to suburbia and fueled all these streets and all that. So we got further away, and then we became dependent on the car. So taking back the city so that you can walk around and that you can bike, I think is something that we think people should have the ability to have the opportunity to have, is that ability to walk on a street or bike on a street, and that they can feel safe.
So what, in Hawaii, what are the challenges to bike share, and what's unique about those challenges here in Hawaii? I mean, there are just the general challenges of how do you get people to ride bikes, how do you get them out of their cars and onto something that's a cold, hard bike seat, you know, and it's not a lazy boy on wheels.
Right.
So, like your car is, or one's car, not your car. I don't know
but
whether your car is like a lazy boy, but you know, I mean, compared to a bike, right? But so, what are the sort of unique challenges here?
Well, you know, we actually have the opposite. We're sort of like, why don't we have bike share, is what people say. Because we have, okay, I hope I can do the 5 conditions and not forget one.
Okay.
Okay,
well.
so we have good weather 365 days a year, which you alluded to. In our urban core, we have flat terrain. A lot of cities, think of San Francisco, think of Seattle, think of some of these places that are trying to do bike share. They have huge hills.
Yeah.
We have density of population and business and attractions. You know, Iolani Palace and Waikiki Beach and business, you know, where people work, and a lot of housing, and what we're seeing in Kaka'ako is very dense, and that makes things shorter distances. We have the support of the city and the county and the state. We have people who want to see bike share work, and just like what I thought, the 5th one is important, and I'm not remembering it. We have, come on somebody.
Someone tweet.
We have another one.
Right.
But
Well,
anyway, so we have all the conditions. Now what we don't have is, we are fortunate to have the support of the city and the county in funding right now. So we've gotten $2 million from the city and the state, and we have some other support, significant support from Ulupono Initiative and from HPU and from some other supporters of ours. But we're still short on capital to launch.
From HPU, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because of their downtown
Dr.
campus?
Bannister, yes. And in fact, we
Interesting.
will have locations at the Aloha Tower
that'd
campus,
be
and we'll have
fantastic.
them around Fort Street.
Yeah.
And when you think about, for the whole idea of the student population being able to move around, I think bike share is going to be fantastic for them.
Yeah.
But we do need to raise more capital. And so we've been working on that. You know, there's different avenues for it. I think that's our biggest hurdle.
What is your goal for?
We need to
How
raise
much?
$7 million.
Okay.
Yeah, so we are pursuing different strategies, but if anybody out there wants to sponsor us, we'll give you a great, it's a great opportunity
Sure.
to really lead the way as a leading corporation out there, or anybody who wants to support us in other ways financially.
Are there other city initiatives, other cities that are interested in sort of mentoring Honolulu or something like that?
Well, that would be nice. I haven't seen that. Everybody, pretty much the cities focus on their own cities, right?
Sure, yeah.
And that's where it's like the community needs to get behind it.
Yeah.
And that's where we look for business leaders. Where we've seen big sponsorships in other places, there's been they call them a hometown hero, that's come in and sponsored the bike share system, and that's made it financially feasible. So that's where you have Citibank came out, City Court, and said, we're going to make this happen because we
Right.
believe in New York and we believe this is going to make a difference.
And I believe the one in Portland is sponsored by
Nike.
Nike, and they've got an orange basket,
Yes.
which looks like their shoebox
Right.
with the swoosh on
Yeah,
it.
isn't that
And-
great? So
Yeah.
Nike came out at $2 million a year to support
Right.
their bike share system, which is smaller than ours, by the way.
Right.
Hulu came out in Santa Monica to support bike share there. The Blue Cross Blue Shield affiliate in Philadelphia. So anyway, we're looking for a hometown hero. So if there's a hometown hero out
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
call me.
Right. And so you're saying that there has been a lot of support from the city government and so
Yes.
on. What, how does that support translate to things on the street? So
Yes.
really, I mean, you're going to need stations, that's
Right.
one thing, but you're also going to need that sort of a safe and
Right.
convenient passage between stations and to destinations.
Yes.
And so how does that work for,
Yeah.
how's that worked for
That's
you
a
so
really
far?
good question. So on the first piece of it, then the city, we're working with the city on locating our stations. And we worked with them on, there's certain conditions that we need to have. That means that we are somewhere that's visible. We are somewhere where there's access to safe riding. We're totally solar powered, so we need to have access to sun.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Isn't that
it's-
great?
Yeah.
Totally solar
So all the
powered.
stations are solar powered?
Yeah, so for the communications
Right.
to us, all of that's powered by solar.
So that would never sort of go down?
No,
Yeah,
no,
yeah.
it should never go down.
Yeah.
And so that's great. And then we're also just weighted on the street, so we don't dig in. So one way the city's supporting us is through the permitting and the locate, as we're siting all of our stations. So that's number one. And then the second piece is we're working on how do we route people? If you don't ride a bike around now, then you're saying, well, this looks scary. How do I get from here to there? And so we're working with the city on a wayfinding system. And so the wayfinding is, if I have a destination that I'm going to, how might I get there? And we'll use our station panels with maps, but we're also working on an app that people can use and other means to help get them from place to place. There's a lot of people who don't ride a bike don't know that there are safe places to bike because
Yes.
they're always on the places where the cars drive.
Right, because
But,
they're in the car.
They're in the car.
Right.
And so, but there are places, so I've learned this community a little bit, and you'll say, well, how do I get from Aloha Tower over to Waikiki? They'll say, well, you go on this street, then you go on this street, then you go on this street, and you go this way, and that's a good way to go. I didn't know that. And so that's the kind of thing that we can help make in the interim period. We can help provide those routes for people. And then in the long term, then what we can do is more people are on bikes, then more people are going to say, you know what, let's create more places for these. Let's make it safer for people to ride. And making it safer for people to ride, or that perception of safety, will get more people riding. And then we start getting help making some transformation. And I think that everybody will appreciate.
What sort of, so I'm not sure if this is too early in the game to talk about these things, but what are your baseline sort of statistics for these? Like what's the ridership going to look like? How many bikes? How many
Sure.
stations?
I can give you an idea. It
Yes.
might change a little
Yes,
bit
yes.
before we launch,
Yeah.
but we're looking right now. We had thought about 200 stations. We're dialing that down a little bit, only because in some areas where there's single-family homes, there's not enough density to put bike share station in those areas. So right now we're between 150 and 160 stations. So, and then that would be about 1,400 bikes, 1,400 bikes.
Okay, and actually when you were talking about Paris, so that's just, a huge city like Paris,
Right.
that's got 23,000 bikes
Right.
now.
Right.
So,
So
And Paris
they
is a
will
lot
have more
bigger.
later. Yeah,
Yeah.
Paris is a lot bigger, but our size and density of our station network is actually going to be the most dense stations.
oh, right.
What we've seen that happens in other places, and we've been sort of putting our foot down, is people say, well, we have this much money, so why don't we just do that and see what happens? Well, sometimes what happens if you don't have the density is it's not used, and then people say it's a failure.
Right.
So if we go in with a strong network with the right number of bikes in this initial phase where all the conditions are so good, then we can say, okay, from success then we can expand to other areas. So that's the way we're thinking. So our density is going to be one of the most dense systems.
Okay.
Because we've learned,
Right.
it's good to be late sometimes, because then you get to learn what everybody
Sure.
sort of made a mistake on, and then we can grab some best practices.
Yeah, and is there a sort of a consortium or network of bike share professionals
Yes.
who work on these issues?
There is,
Yeah.
even though we're a really young industry. It's called NABSA, North American Bike Share Association.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
Yeah.
And we actually had a meeting in Chicago last fall.
I hope you all went on your bikes.
We were all on the bikes, doing bike tours, and Ben
They have a great
Trevino.
system.
They have a great
Yeah.
system, and it's also good to observe. So how are people using it there,
Mm-hmm.
and how are they pricing it, and talk to people, what's working, what's not working. And that was really good. But Ben Trevino, who's our president and CEO, there's two of us, me and Ben, and we also did a trip and visited a bunch of bike share systems around the country. We visited like 7 cities in 7 days, one of those kind of trips. But we were really able to learn a lot on that trip about sort of how systems worked and what was working and not.
Okay. Well, so we'll need to take another break here, but when we come back, let's talk more about some of these issues that are the burning issues to get this dream made into a reality here. So you're watching Hawaii State of Clean Energy, and I'm Anu Hittel, sitting in for Jay Fidel with Lori McCarney in the studio today. And don't go away, we will be back after the break.
Aloha, I'm Kaui Lucas, host of Hawaii is My Mainland, here on Think Tech Hawaii every Friday at 3 p.m. We address issues of importance for those of us who live here on the most isolated landmass on the planet. Please come join me Fridays at 3 p.m. Mahalo.
Hi, my name is Stan Osserman, and I host the show every Friday here on Think Tech Hawaii called Stan the Energy Man. We talk about everything energy, from anaerobic digesters to batteries to hydrogen fuel cell and grid power. And we do that to keep you informed on the latest technology that's out there and the things that are going on in Hawaii. We broadcast every Friday from noon until 1 o'clock, and I hope you'll tune in. So sometimes we'll be on Think Tech, and sometimes we'll be on Olelo Channel 54, and I'd like you to listen in to me and join me every Friday. We'll see you then. Aloha.
Welcome back to Hawaii State of Clean Energy. I'm Anu Hittel, standing in for Jay Fidel, and in the studio today we have Lori McCarney, CEO of Bikeshare Hawaii. And we were just talking about how we can expand some of the ideas that people have about bikes, and maybe overcome some of the reservations that people have about bicycles, and especially a bike share program.
Mm-hmm.
So what are the typical questions that people ask you about these bikes and about the program?
Yeah, well, people say, boy, you can't ride a bike in Honolulu because if you ride a bike, it's going to get stolen, and all your bikes are going to get stolen in no time. You're just going to put them out there and people are going to take them. But no, it's not going to happen. Well, probably some will happen, but we'll plan for that. But what the bikes are designed, the tools don't fit. The parts don't fit other bikes. You can't even get at the different pieces of the bike. I had a bike in here for, just for demo purposes, and it was making a little clicking noise. I took it to a bike shop and said, can you figure out? And they said, I can't even get in there, and this is a bike shop. So anyway, they're designed not to be vandalized. Right. And then when you dock it in at a station, it locks. And at that point, we know that you've docked that bike, and you're free to go. And then at that point, you can't pull it out. They were talking about where did they have a hurricane? And I was picturing, they were talking about the bike share stations, and the bikes were just there. The bikes were sort of flapping on the station, but they didn't go anywhere.
Wow.
So it's a very sturdy. They're
yes.
very tough. So
yes,
I get asked that.
Yeah, and I know that they are really sturdy because I've actually ridden in the Divi bikes in Chicago, and they're real clunkers. Boy.
They're clunkers, yeah.
And they're great because there's this trail that goes down the Lakeshore Trail, and
I did that myself.
It's sort of at
an angle.
Yeah, and I thought, I don't know how this is going to work. I'm going to fall into the lake.
Yeah.
And it worked just fine. They're really tough bikes, and it was wonderful. So.
And they're really made for novice riders. So I ride a bike, and I have a 15-pound bike, and then these things weigh 50 pounds. And all my friends go and pick them up and go, oh, it's so heavy. I said, yeah, it's got a low center of gravity.
Right.
It's totally stepped through. It's designed for a novice rider.
So
it's not complicated.
And that's an interesting point.
Yeah.
So a novice rider. And so what about the people who are maybe not wanting to get sweaty and
exactly.
I know that in Paris they're starting the pedelecs.
Yeah,
so
pedelecs.
It sounds vaguely illegal, but
right, I know, a little bit, huh?
But essentially there are those electric sort of bikes.
Yeah,
right.
Right. So they're pedal assist is what. So you pedal a little bit, and then the motor kicks in. We may introduce those at some point in the future, but for now, we really. I've been testing it personally myself, because I think one of the hardest groups to get to ride the bikes will be professional women. Because they say, wait a minute, my hair, my makeup, I'm going to sweat, I have to take a shower. And it's like, again, okay, we're not commuting.
Right.
And I'll tell them, okay, how far can you walk in heels? And I said,
Right.
for me, it's probably 3 or 4 blocks. Then it's like, I better take my car, or I better have different shoes. So you'll see me riding around on a bike share bike, and I'll have my helmet on there because I'm trying to show people
This
it can
is a
be
helmet.
cute. Yeah.
So let's talk about this
Yeah.
accessory that you have here.
Yeah, so one of the things I've tried to do is, I think people have perception in their minds of people on bikes are they're either in cargo shorts and orange vests, or they're in spandex. And the thing about bike share, it's faster walking. It's designed for, you walk, you get on a bike, and you walk. And you don't change shoes, you don't change clothes, you don't take a shower, because we're talking about trips that are 5 to 10 minutes. I've done a couple of tests myself because I don't want to lead any of my friends wrong. You know, if they're going to an important meeting and they show up sweaty, I know they'll kill me if I tell them it's okay. So I rode a bike all the way from Chinatown to Kahala. And along the way, I got a lot of looks because I always ride in a dress and heels. Because I want to, it's actually easy to ride in a dress and heels. And I have little tips on how to keep your dress so it doesn't fly up and stuff. But when would you start sweating? And it was like 25 minutes, because I did it in the middle of the day because I really wanted
Wow.
to see.
Yeah.
But between, you know, because there was enough of a breeze and I wasn't racing, I was taking my
Right.
time.
Right.
It was fine.
I mean, you could get sweaty just dashing on foot, right?
Exactly.
Somewhere.
So I
So,
think
yeah.
women are one group
Yeah.
that bike share has tended not to use it as much, although
Okay.
that's starting to grow. We also see seniors maybe not using it as much, and I think both of the groups, women and seniors, are also more conscious of safety issues than men. For what we're
Sure.
smarter at
Sure.
and
Or maybe they're more dispensable or something, and it doesn't matter.
They shouldn't
one
put us
can
together,
be,
maybe.
One can be replaced by another very easily.
Yeah, so those are two groups, and I enjoy biking, and I think being out in the fresh air instead of being in a parking garage and getting in the car and going around and sitting in traffic and all of that. I think the idea of being able to be outside and do something that is active, it's healthy for me. They've shown for women it helps with depression, and with men it helps with stress. The idea of some activity. And so if you can get somewhere and have a healthy way to get there and feel good about it, then I think it helps in a lot of ways.
So I'm still sort of puzzled as to how this would work in terms of, would people actually go on the road? Would there be specific bike lanes?
So you would ride on the road, and so where our stations are in between Waikiki and downtown and Chinatown, where there is infrastructure, you'll see more bike, like the King Street cycle track.
Right,
You'll see bike
okay.
stations along there, but you'll also see them at places like the Pacific Club. You'll also see them at places like at Aloha Tower. So when you come off of Aloha Tower, then what do? Are you going to ride on Ala Moana or Nimitz? Maybe
Right,
not, because the
right.
bike infrastructure there is not as good. There are some places where you can ride on the sidewalk. There's different regulations on where you can and where you can't.
I see.
And we know people ride their bikes where they feel safer.
Right.
So in that case, then that's where our navigation and
feel-
wayfinding comes
see,
in, where we
right.
help people say, if you're going to go from here to there, here's how
Do
we
this route.
recommend going.
Yeah, okay. I mean, it's a little bit like the Google apps
A
on,
little bit, yeah.
where you sort of have the bike option and the bus
Yeah,
and
right.
the car option.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, well, that makes sense. And this is sort of a pie in the sky kind
Yeah.
of dream, and I know that Jay had actually also talked about this in an article that he wrote last fall, but the rail that's coming up.
Right.
And I have sort of this dream that maybe instead of a rail, we could just, all the sort of rails to trails kind of things
Yeah.
that have happened. We
I
could
know.
just skip the rails part and just do a trail and just have a link that you could bike. It would be a bike skyway.
I
So-
don't know if I want to weigh in on that exactly. But I did talk to Hart, and I said, okay, are there things that you're doing with the rail that will help bicyclists? And the first thing they talk about is, bike store. You can put the bike on the train. But I've seen in other cities that at commute times it gets too congested on the trains to be able to bring a bike on. But there are some places where they have the TOD developments, the transit oriented developments that are going around the stations, where there's more bike infrastructure going in there. So as those start coming out, we'll see more things and more connectors. So there will be connections there. And then we'll also then be able to, we're going to have bike share stations in the dense areas where it makes sense. So you'll be able to get off the train, get on a bike, and then do that last mile. And then in other places, we're saying we need secure bike storage. Because if I live in a suburb we can't make bike share convenient enough to your home for you to probably choose it, but you might choose to take a bike. If you could put it somewhere safe at a bike station or at a bike locker room at one of the stations, then you could get on the train and then come into town and use bike share.
Right.
So yeah, I thought about the idea too. Wouldn't that be sort of cool to have an elevated bike?
Well, they do have it in New York, right? They've got in Western Manhattan. There's the Highline park system, which is really cool.
There's some really, really interesting structures, and there's people here working on some really interesting bike routing as they're trying to pull together and say, how do we help make biking more attractive to people? Bike share is the equipment. It's making a bike accessible to everybody.
Right.
But then it's like the other part of it is where do you ride and how do you make it feel like you're welcome as somebody on a bike? And that's where all these paths and trails and things come in. So I think working together with bike share being part of this consortium of people who are seeing how we can transform the city, that's how we're going to see it all happen.
Right. And so we're looking at sort of the initial phase of your...
Yep, that's our initial footprint, and you can see on the bottom of the screen that that's around Kapiolani Park, and then at the top is River Street in Chinatown. And then you can see the heart stations are delineated by those big blue dots on there. So we will be associated with the train and in these dense areas. And the idea is for anybody, you're not necessarily living in this area, but you may be, that you'll be able to use bike share to get to and from. Some of the people, I think like Kaka'ako is a good example. Look at all those buildings going up. There's going to be people living there, and if everybody's taking a car on their short trips, we're going to have some gridlock.
Yeah. We already have some gridlock.
We do.
And we could have some more gridlock.
Yes.
So when you say this is the initial phase plan, is it going to cover all of that in the first phase?
Yeah, first phase is, right now we think 150 to 160 stations and 1,400 bikes covers that area.
Okay.
And then as we get going, there's other areas, because people will say, well, what about Wailai and Kaimuki, and what about Kalihi? And so that's where we see that we expand out of that, to try to serve more people and bring more people in and connect communities more. And then there can be pocket communities like Kailua or Kapolei or other areas that have some density in them that could benefit from the idea of bike share in those communities. Now, that doesn't mean that you would ride your bike across the Pali.
Right.
But if we hope you wouldn't. But if you're in Kailua, then you might be able to use bike share, and we know they have traffic issues over there.
Right.
So this could be a good.
And so we're almost to the end of the show, but I just really quickly wanted to ask you, if you can do that in 60 seconds or less, what are your sort of initial goals, and then what's the sort of medium-term goal for you in this next, however you define initial and medium term?
So our goal and our overall objective is to get as many people on a bike as possible. And for the aspects of what we talked about, the environmental, the health, the societal, the financial benefits, we want to make it easy and fun for people to be on bikes. So our first measure of success is how many people do we get riding? And so what are the hurdles to that? Some of them we'll be able to address ourselves, some of them we won't, right? We can't go out and put out bike lanes. That's not who Bikeshare Hawaii is. But we can bring the people then who say, this is a good benefit to me and we want some support in more bike infrastructure. So that's probably our biggest goal.
Great. And so this reminds me of the song by the rock group Queen, which is I Want to Ride My Bicycle, right?
Yes. So and I think riding a bike is fun, and
yes.
It's a great way to get around. And when we've had a bike here, when we have our demo bikes and we take them out, everybody has a smile on their face as soon as they sit on the bike.
Right. And this has been a pleasure to have you and to get to know more about the Bikeshare program, because I personally am very vested in a bike system. I would love to use it more. Ever since moving to Honolulu, I found actually that I'm going to sell my lovely bike and just take the bus and hoof it, but it would be wonderful.
And soon you'll be on Bikeshare.
I will be on Bikeshare. That's where I will be. So I'm gunning for Bikeshare, and
Great.
I hope that's going to be soon, and wishing you all the best and success.
Great.
And thank you very much for being here in the studio with us today. This is Anu Hittel sitting in for Jay Fidel. This is Hawaii State of Clean Energy, and Jay is here every Thursday at 3 o'clock. So join him And I will see you folks on Tuesday on my show. So aloha, namaskar, and goodbye.